Okay, we're going to record this, and I'm hoping everybody in the chat room can hear us. Why don't we go ahead?
You're listening to an Earthcast Echo for January 4th, 2012. We are broadcasting live on Earth Bridges channel for World Bridges Network. Earthcast Echoes are extensions of Earth Day webcast called Earthcast. Today we are broadcasting from Rye Junior High School in Rye, New Hampshire in the U.S. If you are listening live, there's a chat room available to ask questions and share your ideas. Make sure in the chat room you type a name and no password is necessary. Adults and students will be in the chat room, so please be respectful, kind, and helpful. Thank you.
Today we are pleased to be able to speak with Dr. Clyde Roper. He is well known for his research on giant squids and other mollusks. Also, Dr. Roper has a connection to New Hampshire, specifically Rye. Welcome, Dr. Roper. Would you please introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and tell us what your connection with New Hampshire is?
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be in contact with all of you today. My name is Dr. Clyde Roper. I was brought up in Rye, New Hampshire, and as a young boy, I lived on Washington Road, and I was always interested in the beach. We would go down to the beach, my brother and I, and we would look at the tide pools. We would go collecting on the beach, whatever the ocean brought in. So I was exposed to the ocean my entire life, and then when I was 14 years old, I started to be a lobster fisherman, and I was a lobster fisherman out of Rye Harbor from the time I was 16 through, I'm sorry, 14, right on through high school and through college. And then when I went to graduate school, then I had to stop lobstering. And that's when I began to study squids and octopuses and cuttlefishes, and together they are called cephalopods. You probably already know that, right?
Yeah. All right, so we have some questions for you, and people in the chat room, you're welcome to ask questions too. All right, and our classes are just changing, so we've got some little noise in the background. So why don't we start off with some of the first questions we had?
When were you here at this school?
When was I there at that school? Actually, Rye Junior High School, I don't think existed when I was going to school there. And golly, I was there. Let's see, from right around in the late 1940s, early 1950s. Wow, that was a long time ago. And I graduated from Portsmouth High School in 1955. So that will give you an idea of the time I was there. So I was and then I was a lobster fisherman from probably 1951 or 52 until I went to graduate school in the fall of 1959. Any other questions?
And when did you become interested in squid?
Why did I become interested in squid? That's a very good question. When I went to graduate school to get my advanced degrees, I wasn't really certain of what I was going to go into. It was perhaps logical that I would study something like lobsters or crabs or something like that, because that's what I had been involved with as a kid. But my very first semester in graduate school, I was introduced to cephalopods, squids, octopuses, and cuttlefishes. And then I was a research assistant for a professor who was a world authority on squids. And so in the work that I was doing for him, I happened to discover a new species, that is a species of squid, deep sea squid, that had never been discovered before and never been named. And so that became my master's thesis. And from then on, I was hooked. And I've just really enjoyed working on squids, especially, but also cuttlefishes and octopuses for my entire career.
Congratulations on that new species.
Do you have any
Thank you.
kids? And if you do, can you tell us a bit about them?
Well, I've described several new species on my own and also with colleagues, and these were mostly animals that came from the midwaters and from the deep sea, where we know so very little about the animals. So most of these are fairly small, and the exciting thing, at least to me, about them is that many of them have what we call light organs or photophores. These animals in the midwaters and the deep sea are able to produce what we call bioluminescence, that is, living light, something like you'll be familiar with on fireflies and so forth. But virtually all the animals that live in the deep sea have the ability to produce their own light. So those beautiful light organs always interested me, and and then subsequently, I worked with a colleague in Hawaii for a number of years studying the bioluminescence produced by squids and fishes and even shrimps. So that was a large part of my research for about a 6-year period.
Have, what is the largest and second largest squid you have ever found?
Well, the largest squid that I've ever worked on, of course, is the giant squid. And I've worked on many specimens of giant squid, really all over the world, not only in the United States, but in New Zealand and Australia, Japan, in Europe. So I've looked at a lot of specimens of giant squid. I guess the second largest would be a squid that actually doesn't have a common name, but it's a big squid, and the specimen was caught off New England, and it's called Taningia dani, and it's interesting because it has two of its arms have two big light organs, light producing organs on them, and they have very large beaks. And instead of having suction cups on their arms, they have hooks like cat's claws. So it's a very effective way for catching their prey.
It's pretty cool.
Have you ever seen
Yeah.
a live giant squid?
Have you ever seen a live giant squid?
I have not seen a live giant squid in the sea, although I have been looking for them. I had several expeditions, but I have seen a colleague and good friend of mine in Japan actually took some still photographs of a live giant squid in the deep sea, and then subsequent to that, he was able to catch a living giant squid and brought it up to the surface where we have video and still shots of that living giant squid. So my objective when I had my expeditions was to try to find a living giant squid in its natural habitat in the very deep sea. That would be 500 to 1,000 meters deep.
Oh, that's cool.
How long do squids live?
How long does squid live? That's a good question. Most of the squid and most of the octopuses and cuttlefishes tend to live a little bit longer, but most of the squid live for about a year. Some of the tiny species live only for perhaps 4 to 6 months. And during that time, they grow from eggs to little larvae, all the way up to fully adult size, but they'd only be a couple of inches long. Whereas a giant squid, we think lives probably 2 to 3 years. The giant Pacific octopus that lives out on the west coast of the United States, that would live to be about 3 years of age. But they're very fast-growing animals.
Is it a myth that squids have one eye?
I'm sorry, does a squid have one eye?
Yes.
Actually, no. A squid and octopuses and cuttlefish, they all have two eyes, one on each side of their head. So when you see an image or a picture of a squid, you'll see it with only one eye. For example, can you see this? So that's the
Yes.
Yeah.
model of a giant squid, and that's the you see the one eye right there. Right. I'm going to turn it over, and there's the second or around, and there's the second eye right there. So they have an eye on each side of the head, and this is the top of the animal. This is the tail, and these are the 8 arms, and then the 2 long feeding tentacles. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
How many hearts do squids have?
Well, squids have, interestingly, they have 3 hearts. They have what you would call a normal, the normal central heart. And actually, I can't open this up, but I'll show you where they are. The one heart would be right here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so inside this mantle or inside the body, that's where one heart is, and then it's connected with blood vessels to 2 other hearts, one on the end of each of the gills. And these animals are like fishes. They get their oxygen, extract oxygen from the water with their gills. And in order to make the blood flow really quickly, the 2 gills, each of the gills has a heart at the base of that. So it pumps the water rapidly through the gills and into the circulatory system. So good question, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. How long is a giant squid compared to a person?
Oh, that's a good question, too. So let's just say a giant squid, the largest giant squid that I've ever examined, and I believe that's probably as large as they get, was about 45 to 50 feet maximum length. That's from the tip of the tail all the way to the outstretched tentacles. So if you think that, what are you guys? Maybe some of you are 5 feet tall. So if it would take 10 of you lying down on the floor, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, 10 of you laying out to make the same length as a giant squid. However, they are very heavy too. They would weigh a maximum size would be about 500 pounds. So they're both very long and very heavy. Big, big, big animals. And the length of the body, which is just this part here behind the head, that would be up to 6 to 7 feet long. And then the head is 2 or 3 feet long. The arms, the 8 arms, would be up to 10 feet long or 12 feet. And then all the rest of the long length is in the long feeding tentacles that are used for capturing their prey.
Wow.
Cool.
Very.
Is
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is it true that giant squids can take down ships?
Well, is it true that a giant squid can take down a ship? Actually, it's not true, but it sure makes interesting and exciting stories. And back in the old days, before people really knew very much about giant squid, there was a lot of mythology and a lot of stories that were told about giant squid. That's because people hadn't seen any alive, or they hadn't even been able to study actual specimens. So the early sailors and seamen made up these stories, which made a lot of interesting stories. But it turns out when we know the real giant squid, they're not vicious, they're not aggressive. They're just animals that live in the deep sea, and they happen to be very big. So they're gentle giants.
Oh, how are squid able to go so deep?
How are squids able to go so deep? Well, are you thinking about how can they go deep and not be compressed?
Yeah.
Yes, well, there are no, in all of these deep sea animals, not only the squids, the fishes, the shrimps, all of the animals that live in the deep sea, none of them have gas bladders or any gas spaces or air spaces in their body. So it's just pure tissue, which is the same density and consistency as seawater itself. So when they go down in the deep sea, they don't feel the pressure. Whereas when we go into the deep sea, or even in diving, scuba diving depths, we can begin to feel the pressure because we have gas spaces in our body, in our lungs, and so forth. So it's not a problem for these guys.
Are squids poisonous?
Squid, you mean from the bite or to eat?
Whichever.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do both.
do both. All right.
Yeah.
In general, squids, the bite from a squid is not poisonous. There is one group of octopuses, a couple of species of octopus that live in Australia and in the Indo-Pacific region. Their bite is very, very, very toxic, very poisonous, and there have been some people who have been killed by being bitten by the blue-ringed octopus. But squids do not have that kind of poison. So a bite from a squid is like a sharp pinch, but it's not poisonous, so it won't hurt you. Although I've been bitten by squid plenty of times, and sometimes the saliva that they secrete when they bite, it's kind of itchy, maybe like a bee sting or a mosquito sting or something like that. But it's not going to hurt you.
Do squids have bones or cartilage?
Well, they don't have squid don't have bones the way mammals do, for example, and fishes, but they do have the skull is cartilaginous. It's made of cartilage, and they do have the gladius that runs down the backbone, right down right down the center of the back. It's a supporting rod, and it's made of chitinous material like your fingernails, very similar to your fingernails. So while there aren't bones, there are supporting structures.
Have you ever seen any changes in the squid environment that might be a concern for them?
Well, that's a really excellent question, and some biologists, marine biologists who have been working in the field of ecology, have noted that in recent decades, the maximum size of animals in the sea has been decreasing. Like the giant Pacific octopus formerly was huge, but now they never find specimens that big. And the same with giant squid. We haven't found specimens anywhere near the maximum size that we used to find 30 or 40 years ago. And scientists believe that that's because the oceans really are, first of all, they're becoming polluted very heavily, which is very sad. And also, there's a great deal of fishing and overfishing. So many of the animals do not have the food accessible to them that enables them to grow to their maximum size. So that's a good question, and it's something that we all really do need to be aware of, don't we? That we have things going on in the oceans that are not healthy for the oceans, and certainly not healthy for the animals that live in the oceans. Thank you for that.
What do they eat?
What does squid eat, or giant squid?
The giant squid.
Okay, good. I like to say that the giant squid are so big, they can eat whatever they want to, right? Generally, giant squid and squids in general will feed on a couple of things. They generally feed on fishes, smaller fishes, and they also feed on other squids, smaller squids. So they know what's good to eat. They eat calamari and they eat fish, both very healthy. So, and I recommend that you eat more fish and eat more calamari. You'll like it.
Has a live squid ever stuck on you?
A live squid ever stuck on me? Sure. Also octopuses. They have a suction. I've got an octopus here for you to see. Also, do you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool octopus, and there's the suckers on the octopus. But I have some suckers of a giant squid, a mold of from a giant squid tentacle. Can you see that? Can you see the suckers there? These round, big round suckers.
Wow.
That's from the tentacle, and that's what these animals use for capturing their prey. So they can capture pretty big prey and then bring it in towards their mouth, which is in on the beaks, and then they just will take chunks with their beaks. The beaks are like parrots' beaks actually, and they take bite chunks out and then ram it down their throat with something that's called a radula. It's like a tongue with a rasp or a file on it that pushes it down their throat. So they'll eat fishes and other squids, as I say, anything they want.
Is it true that they attack whales? The giant squid attack whales?
Well, actually, that's not true. What happens is that the sperm whales, and these are only sperm whales, the toothed whales, there is one tooth from a sperm whale. You see how big that is? Uh, and I have a model of a sperm whale as well, right there, with the teeth here. And the true story is that the sperm whales attack giant squid for their food. But because the giant squid in relation are pretty big, the giant squid will battle and fight and try to escape. But I think that the sperm whale always wins because sperm whales are huge and very, very powerful. But again, when you read the mythology and the stories, people like to think that giant squid are powerful enough to actually to defeat a sperm whale. But sorry, it's not true. Sperm whales always win.
Do you study anything else?
Do I study anything else? Um, Actually, I have studied since my graduate school days, and then since going to work at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington at the Museum of Natural History. I've always studied squid, but that doesn't mean I'll ever run out of work to do because there are over 1,000 species of squids and octopuses and cuttlefishes. So there's always plenty to work on, not only studying the different kinds and defining and understanding the individual species, but just as important is studying their ecology and their biology. What do they eat and what eats them? How do they live? What are their temperature requirements in the sea? What is the food? And all of these questions that we even ask about human biology. We ask the same questions about these animals that live in the sea. So I've got plenty of work to do.
How do squid swim so fast?
How do they swim so fast? Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. They swim fast because their body is all pure muscle, and they have an opening that around the head and in front of the body, or mantle, as we call it. So they suck water in to this mantle, then they lock the opening around the head, and then they contract the muscles in the mantle very powerfully, and that shoots a squirt out through what we call the funnel. And then that makes the animal squirt backwards. So they have a very, very powerful mechanism for swimming. And octopuses have the same sort of thing. And I think you maybe can see the funnel better on this octopus. Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Like a jet
Um,
engine.
although squids do swim more powerfully than octopuses do.
Have you even ever eaten squid?
Oh yes, I have eaten many, many squid, many different kinds of squid. And
What does it
and I
taste
have
like?
to say I enjoy it very much. Squid is delicious, and squid is very, very healthy. And you know what they call squid in restaurants, right? What do they call it?
Calamari.
Calamari. That's right. So it's very
Calamari.
nutritious if it's cooked right. Of course, if it's deep fried, that's not so good. But squid meat is really good for you.
Do you own your own boat?
Um, yes, I do own my own boat, but it's not a squid fishing boat. I
What is it called?
because I was a lobster fisherman, I always liked the Maine lobster boats and the lobster boats that you see in Rye Harbor. So a number of years ago, I bought a Maine lobster boat, and because I live down here in Virginia, near the Chesapeake Bay, it's a very unusual boat to be down here, but I like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is your job hard to do?
Well, sometimes it's hard, but here's something that I think is true in any kind of a job or profession. If you love what you're doing, if you love your job, it doesn't make any difference at all how hard it is. I mean, you could work very, very, very hard, and if you like it, so what?
Is it true that giant squid will sometimes try to eat baby sperm whales?
Giant squid try to eat baby sperm whales. Um, and you asked me if that was true, and I cannot tell you, but I would rather doubt it, frankly. Even a baby sperm whale is a pretty big and powerful animal, and it stays around with its mother for a long time. So the mother would help protect the baby sperm whale. So I think probably the answer to that is no. Giant squid probably don't attack baby sperm whales.
Is it possible to accurately infer the size of a squid from the beaks found in sperm whales' stomachs? And what would the largest possible one known from the beaks?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Did you think that up?
No. One of
Somebody
our
else
fellow
did. But
teachers
anyway,
did.
it's a great question. And of course, the sperm whales are not able to digest the beaks because they're chitinous material. So that's how we've gotten to learn a lot about sperm whales because studying the stomach contents and then studying the beaks that the of the squid the sperm whale has eaten. And the answer to your question is yes, you can determine the size of the squid that that sperm whales have eaten by certain measurements. So if you have a specimen of squid and you can get the measurements of the beaks as well as the measurements on the rest of the body, then when you have just plain beaks, you can calculate how big how big a squid the sperm whale ate. So good question.
What fascinates you most about squids?
Oh boy. I think just about everything. First of all, I think they're beautiful animals because they have the skin that has pigment cells in them, and they have the light organs, the photophores, and all of these are directly innervated and connected by nerves to the brain. So they have what we call color play, and they're able to change their color and their color patterns to suit the situation, either as camouflage, and the same thing with their light organs. They can flash to scare away potential predators, or they can use it to hide their silhouettes from above, so that a predator can look up. Their bioluminescence is on, but it matches the downwelling light, so they disappear. So I think they're just, so many aspects of their biology are very, very interesting.
What is the most bizarre fact you know about giant squids or squids in general?
The most bizarre fact. Oh boy, that's a good one. Um, Well, I'm not sure if I can. I don't tend to think of things as bizarre in these animals, so I'm not sure I can come up with an answer. What would you think might be bizarre from what you've learned?
I'd say the light organs that give off light. That's probably the most bizarre thing I've learned today.
Aha. Okay. Well, I guess you could call that bizarre. It's certainly a natural part of the animals, but it's certainly bizarre from the standpoint of most of the animals that we know that live on the ground on Earth, not in the water. Wouldn't it be fun though if you and I and all other human beings had photophores or light-producing organs, so that we could flash our lights at people or shine our lights at people, and also receive light signals from them. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Will you ever be able to visit us in Ryde?
Oh boy, I would love to. I come up to New England, to New Hampshire and Maine in the summertime. Unfortunately, school is out at that time, but I could come up at other times because I'm officially retired, so I don't have to go to work at the Smithsonian every day. I can come up to Rye and see you guys.
Come anytime.
All right.
Wait, can I tell them I'm also a fisherman? We're gonna have to wrap it up now because we have to go to our next class.
Okay.
So thank you for being here.
All right. And we
You're
have an outro we're going to read.
You're most welcome. You've been a great bunch of kids, and I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You've been listening to an Earthcast Echo live webcast from Rye Junior High School in Rye, New Hampshire in the United States. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Clyde Roper, for joining us today. We also want to thank everyone who listened in live and participated in the chat. Thanks also go to the World Bridges Network for allowing us to broadcast on the Earth Bridges channel. That's all for this show.